So we have a very different video today, not related to Final Fantasy or Resident Evil, so I don't expect anyone to actually watch it, but it is related to fighting games, and I'm a huge fan of fighting games. I grew up playing them, so they have a really special place in my heart, and I really feel like there's certain sensations and emotions that you can only get from fighting games, whether it's playing against the computer and learning the mechanics, or playing against an actual human opponent. It's just an incredibly fun, unique experience that is usually one-on-one or 2v2 or 3-on-3, what have you, that only fighting games can replicate. And the game in question for today is MultiVersus, which you guys might remember I did cover here on the channel a few times in the past, and the game was in early access last year and it was pretty successful. If I remember correctly, at one point in time they had around 10 million active registered users, meaning that was 10 million people registered playing the game. These weren't just, people who signed up and then just stopped playing. These were people actively involved within the community, which was pretty massive. Eventually the game would taper off, it would start to have issues, and people would stop playing. So they shut the game down. They've come back recently with a relaunch for the official launch of the game, and they had a trailer showing off some of the new characters, including the Joker from DC Comics, Agent Smith from the Matrix films, but the one character that stood out to me and got me really inspired to make this video is Jason Voorhees from Friday the 13th. Now, for those of you who don't know, I am a huge fan of horror films, especially the Friday the 13th films and the character of Jason Voorhees. Honestly, I think he's just a misunderstood mama's boy who was treated poorly as a child, so he's just enacting karma and giving it to people who deserve it, in my personal opinion. And if you go back far enough on my channel, you'll actually find a ton, and I mean a ton, of Friday the 13th gameplay videos that I uploaded from that game in particular, because believe it or not, I don't toot my horn very often, I was actually pretty good at that game. As a counselor and as Jason, I had a lot of fun and I got pretty good at it. And I didn't narrate those videos with my voice, but I did have text up on screen just kind of walking people through what I was doing in those games and just kind of having fun. And that game was a blast when it did work, but unfortunately it was pretty buggy. But Jason has been added to MultiVersus and he looks really sick. So I just wanted to talk about the look of Jason, some of his move sets and mechanics and all that stuff, and how it's going to work in MultiVersus, because it looks like it's going to be really fun. So starting off first with the look of Jason, he actually kind of looks very similar to how he looked in Jason X, and I think there might be a reason for that, because MultiVersus is a Warner Brothers property and the rights to Friday the 13th and Jason are kind of all over the place, especially with the lawsuit stuff that happened recently. But the first 8 Friday the 13th films were all done by Paramount, and despite their success, Paramount was incredibly embarrassed by these films. They wanted to get them off their hands and be taken seriously, so they sold the rights to Warner Brothers, and under their New Line Cinema division, they created 2 films, Jason Goes to Hell, The Final Friday, and Jason X. So I think because of the rights situations, they can't have Jason looking like he did in the films 1 through 8. They kind of have to go off of what they currently own, which would be Jason X, and he looks a lot like the Jason X counterpart. His t-shirt and his pants are all washed out. He's kind of human looking to a degree. The shape of the mask is more rounded than it normally is. He's got the chain around his neck and the tattered brown coat, which Jason does have at the beginning of Jason X and throughout that movie. He might even have some Freddy vs. Jason influence in there too with the coat, but I have to point out he's got some fresh new work boots on. Jason had to go get some new Timbs for his MultiVerse debut, and they are looking pretty sharp. And they even go as far as to give him the Uber Jason suit as well when Jason gets murdered, but then he gets the upgrade from those little nano machines and goes Uber Jason. They gave him that outfit as well, and they both look super incredible. And I love the art style. MultiVersus is obviously like this super cartoony Scooby-Doo-esque art style, and Jason just kind of fits into it really well. He even has that like classic archetype of his build, where you have this cartoonish brute who's like an upside down pyramid with the really big upper broad shoulders and the super tiny lower waist and legs. I'm a big fan of that design. I think it's super cool and it never really gets old. And it kind of reminds me of one of the videos I made a while ago talking about MultiVersus and some of the characters I wanted to see, like Freddy Krueger, Tony Soprano. And I think Jason Voorhees was one of those characters that I wanted to see in MultiVersus, because there was a line of action figures back in the day by NECA called cartoony tears, I believe was what the name was. And they would take horror movie characters like Jason, Freddy, Pennywise the Clown, I think even Leatherface was involved at one point in time, and they would basically Scooby-Dooify them and make them look super cartoony and silly, and it really works. Freddy looked really cool, Jason looked pretty cool, so that's what this kind of reminds me of, and it's just showing like how versatile the actual design of a character like Jason Voorhees actually is, because he can just be slotted into something like MKX and fit in just fine. In his own game, which is, you know, more based on the films, and now even in MultiVersus, he just kind of fits into these games and it doesn't really stand out. He looks like he belongs, and it's super cool. Now, in regards to his moveset, of course, it is heavily inspired by some of the stuff he does in the movie. It also looks like there's some MKX isms in his gameplay too, but then again, he is this big, hulking, brutish character, and there's really only so much you can do with that type of archetype. So there's stuff like shoulder charges and these really big swings and grabs, but he's got some of the iconic attacks and kills from his movies, like the one from Freddy vs. Jason where he takes the bed while there's a guy still in it and folds it in half, completely murking that fool, who did have it coming. He was not a nice guy. There's also the sleeping bag kill where Jason can pull out a sleeping bag. He can stuff an enemy into the bag and use it as a weapon or throw it. So I'm going to assume there's going to be some people who grab an opponent, put them in the bag, and then just throw them off the edge of the stage, which is going to be really frustrating. He's got the mist step, which kind of alludes to Jason's uncanny ability to teleport around places and just kind of move really quickly, which doesn't really make a lot of sense. And if you go back to Jason Takes Manhattan, he's just full on teleporting in that movie. They don't shy away from it, they don't call it out, but he's teleporting for sure, which is really silly. And then in terms of his weapons, obviously he has the iconic machete with him, he's got a battle axe and that sleeping bag, so he looks like he's going to be a really fun character to play. And normally when I play these games, I don't use like the big tank kind of characters. When I did play MultiVersus, I tended to stick to Wonder Woman. I really liked how she played, she was fast, she had the, you know, agility to her as well. She was kind of really balanced in terms of offense and defense. And I think she's probably the best character to start off with in a game like MultiVersus because she's so well-rounded. But I also did mess around a little bit with Batman. I think Arya Stark was another character I messed around with, but I never really found the character other than Wonder Woman that I felt really comfortable with and wanted to stick with. But with the release of Jason, I full-on want to just re-download the game now, get Jason, and just go online and start playing with him because he just looks like so much fun. And again, I'm a really big fan of Jason as a character. I hope they can get these, you know, rights issues sorted out so we can get a brand new movie one day, and maybe even another video game that's a successor to the Friday the 13th game, but hopefully higher quality with a development team that really knows what they're doing and has experience, and a publisher that won't kind of, you know, dick people around with the ins and outs of how they operate their game and how they release things. And that game was fun when it worked, but it was a pretty big mess at the end of the day. But the trailer itself is just so much fun. It has that classic kind of grindhouse feel to it with the narrator talking about Jason and all of the stuff he's doing. And of course, he's targeting people like Velma and Shaggy, who would be like the teenagers on a campground that you would want to go after in those movies. But this just looks like so much fun. It's super charming and has completely gotten me re-interested in MultiVersus and wanting to check that out. And I know this video is super random. There's no Sephiroth talk. There's no Final Fantasy theory crafting or talking about Resident Evil rumors, but I'm a big Jason Voorhees fan. I love fighting games. MultiVersus, I don't think is going to be as successful as it was when it came out in early access. I think the possibility of reaching those numbers is just kind of out of the realm of possibility, but I think it does have an opportunity to find a foothold and get a good number of people on board, interested, wanting to play it, because again, creating a Smash Brothers alternative is not easy. So many companies have tried, so many have failed, some have gotten pretty close, but stuff like Nickelodeon All-Stars and now MultiVersus have kind of found their own winning formula that is still kind of in line with, you know, Smash Brothers. But with that being said, that is the video. Let me know in the comments down below, are you somebody who did play MultiVersus? Are you a Jason Voorhees or horror movie fan? And let me know, is there a specific character that you would like to see added to MultiVersus that you think would be dope? I am Curious Corduroy. I will see you guys in the next video. Please remember to always be excellent to one another.